I sat in that mahogany-paneled law office in downtown Reno watching my stepmother Sandra grip Tyler's hand while the lawyer cleared his throat. My father, looking frail but determined in his wheelchair, stared directly at me as the words left the attorney's mouth. The entire Lake Tahoe estate, valued at $12 million, goes to my son Tyler Matthews. The room erupted in cheers. Sandra actually clapped. Tyler pumped his fist like he'd won the lottery. Everyone turned to see my reaction, expecting tears or rage. Instead, I just smiled and looked straight at the lawyer. "You really don't know, do you?" The lawyer's face dropped. Color drained from his cheeks. My father's voice cracked as he screamed, "Know what? 6 months earlier, I was living my quiet life as a civil engineer in Sacramento, designing water treatment systems for small California towns. My apartment was nothing special, a one-bedroom place with second-hand furniture and engineering textbooks stacked everywhere. I'd built this modest existence entirely on my own, without a penny from my father, Robert Matthews. The divorce happened when I was 8. One day, Dad was there helping me build model airplanes. The next, he was moving his clothes into boxes while Mom cried in the kitchen. Within 2 years, he married Sandra Whitman, a real estate agent with perfectly styled blonde hair and an obsession with status symbols. Tyler came along when I was 12, and from that moment, I became invisible. My childhood weekends at Dad's house were exercises in feeling like an outsider. Tyler got the bigger bedroom, the expensive toys, the private baseball lessons. When I showed him my straight A report cards, Dad would nod absently, while helping Tyler with homework he should have finished alone. Sandra made it clear I was the reminder of Dad's previous mistake. Everything changed when Mom died of breast cancer at 52. I was 25, finishing my master's degree and working part-time to pay for it. Dad didn't even help with funeral expenses. I remember standing at her graveside, watching him check his phone while the pastor spoke. Tyler was 17 then, driving a brand new BMW while I rode the bus to work. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning in March. Dad's voice sounded smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Archie, I need to tell you something. The doctors found stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 6 months, maybe less." I stared at my coffee getting cold. After 7 years of barely speaking, he was calling me because he was dying. "I'm sorry to hear that, Dad. I know we haven't been close, but I need help organizing my affairs. Tyler's still in college, and Sandra gets overwhelmed with paperwork. You're good with details." Against my better judgment, I agreed. Maybe some part of me hoped we could fix something before it was too late. Dad's house in Granite Bay was exactly what you'd expect from someone obsessed with appearances. Marble countertops, expensive furniture, and family photos where I appeared in maybe 1 out of 20 pictures. Tyler's graduation photos covered the mantel. His baseball trophies filled an entire cabinet. My engineering degree hung in the basement next to Dad's old tools. The home office was where Dad kept his business records. Matthews Construction had done well over the years, building custom homes for Sacramento's wealthy suburbs. File cabinets held contracts, permits, and financial documents going back decades. "Everything's in here," Dad said, settling into his leather chair. "Bank statements, property deeds, insurance papers. I need it all organized for the lawyers." I spent the first afternoon creating a filing system, separating active contracts from completed projects. The Lake Tahoe estate kept appearing in the paperwork. Property tax bills, maintenance receipts, insurance policies. The place was worth a fortune. "Tell me about the Tahoe house," I said during dinner with the family. Tyler's face lit up. "It's incredible. 5 bedrooms, private beach access boat dock. Dad bought it as our family legacy." "When did you buy it?" I asked Dad. "About 7 years ago, right after your mother passed." Something felt wrong about that timing, but I couldn't place what. The next morning, I was filing insurance documents when I noticed something odd. A family photo on Dad's desk sat slightly crooked, like someone had moved it recently. When I straightened it, The picture shifted, revealing the edge of what looked like a small safe built into the wall behind. I glanced toward the kitchen where Sandra was making lunch. Dad was napping upstairs. Tyler was at school. Carefully, I moved the photo completely aside. The safe was about the size of a shoebox with a digital keypad. I tried a few obvious combinations: Dad's birthday, Tyler's birthday, their anniversary. Nothing worked. Then I remembered Mom's birthday. She would have turned 59 that year. I punched in the number 090459. The safe clicked open. Inside were documents I'd never seen before. Original property deeds for the Lake Tahoe estate. But these papers told a completely different story than what Dad had shared. The property had been purchased using funds from a life insurance policy, not Dad's life insurance, Mom's. My hands shook as I read through the paperwork. After Mom died, her life insurance company had paid out $2,800,000. According to these documents, that money had been transferred directly to fund the down payment on the Lake Tahoe property. But here was the stunning part: the original beneficiary of Mom's life insurance policy wasn't Dad. It was me. I found the original insurance documents signed in Mom's handwriting. In the event of my death, all proceeds shall go to my son Archie Matthews, to be held in trust until his 30th birthday. She'd set this up to give me a foundation for my future. Dad had somehow gotten control of that money and used it to buy property that he was now leaving to Tyler. My mother had tried to take care of me even after death, and Dad had stolen it. The next 4 months became a careful dance of investigation while pretending to be the dutiful son. Every morning I'd drive from Sacramento to Granite Bay, spend the day organizing paperwork, and return home to research what I'd discovered. My first stop was downtown Sacramento, to the office of David Morrison, Mom's former attorney. Morrison was in his 70s now, with white hair and gentle eyes that reminded me of my grandfather. "Archie," he said, rising from behind a desk covered in legal briefs. "I was so sorry to hear about your father's diagnosis. How are you holding up?" "Actually, Mr. Morrison, I'm here about my mother's life insurance policy." His expression grew serious. "What about it?" I showed him copies of the documents I'd found. Morrison studied them carefully, then pulled out a thick file from his cabinet. "Your mother was very specific about her wishes," he said quietly. "She wanted to ensure your future was secure regardless of what happened with your father's remarriage. She set up that policy specifically for you." "Then how did Dad get the money?" Morrison's jaw tightened. "Shortly after your mother's death, your father presented documents claiming to be your legal guardian with financial power of attorney. Since you were still finishing school in 25, and he was your father, the insurance company released the funds to him for your benefit." "But I never signed any power of attorney." "No, you didn't." Morrison opened another file. "I have the original documents here. Your father's signature is legitimate, but yours appears to be forged." The room felt like it was spinning. "So he stole my inheritance and used it to buy property for Tyler." "That's what it looks like. Your mother would be heartbroken." Morrison helped me contact the insurance company to get complete records. The paper trail was clear. Mom's $2,800,000 had been transferred to an account controlled by Dad, then immediately used for the Lake Tahoe property purchase. But Morrison suggested we dig deeper. If he falsified documents, once there might be other irregularities. I hired a private investigator named Jessica Warren. She was in her 40s with short brown hair and the focused intensity of someone who'd spent years uncovering other people's secrets. "Family financial fraud is more common than people think," Jessica explained during our first meeting. "Usually it starts small and escalates. If your father took that insurance money, he might have been manipulating other assets too." Jessica's investigation revealed the scope of Dad's deception. He'd created fake bank statements showing that Sandra had contributed the down payment for the Lake Tahoe house. These forged documents made it appear that Sandra's money, not Mom's insurance, had funded the purchase. The property transfer papers had been backdated and notarized by someone who'd never actually witnessed the signatures. Dad had essentially created a fictional version of events where Sandra was the financial contributor, making Tyler's inheritance seem legitimate. But Jessica found something even more disturbing. For the past 2 years, Tyler had been systematically draining money from Dad's business accounts. "Look at these patterns," Jessica said, spreading bank statements across her desk. Every few weeks, Tyler withdraws large amounts of cash or transfers money to accounts we can't trace. He's taken over $500,000. The withdrawals always happened when Dad was receiving chemotherapy and too sick to monitor the business closely. Tyler had learned Dad's banking passwords and was quietly moving money offshore. "He's preparing for something," Jessica said. "This isn't random spending. He's building a nest egg." I thought about Tyler's confidence lately, the way he talked about our family legacy and his plans after graduation. He wasn't just expecting to inherit, he was actively stealing what he could before Dad died. Jessica dug deeper into the offshore accounts. Tyler had been working with Sandra to move money through a complex network of shell companies. They'd opened accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland, slowly transferring assets where they'd be difficult to recover. "Your stepmother isn't just enabling this," Jessica explained, "she's orchestrating it." These account setups require sophisticated financial knowledge. Sandra's been planning this for years. The final piece of the puzzle came from Patricia Williams, a bank official who'd worked with Dad's accounts for over a decade. Patricia was hesitant to share information at first, but Jessica's credentials convinced her to cooperate. "Mr. Matthews has been acting strangely lately," Patricia admitted. "He's been making large transfers without his usual careful consideration. When I asked about them, he seemed confused about the details." Patricia pulled up account records on her computer. "See these transactions? They're consistent with someone else having access to his accounts. The timing patterns don't match his usual business habits." The evidence was overwhelming. Tyler wasn't just the favored son waiting for his inheritance. He was actively stealing from Dad while planning to inherit everything legitimately. If Dad died as expected, Tyler would get the business, the property, and all remaining assets while keeping the money he'd already stolen hidden offshore. But the most shocking discovery came when Jessica ran deeper background checks on Tyler's recent activities. "Archie, you need to see this," Jessica said during our final meeting. "I've been tracking Tyler's purchases over the past 6 months. Look at what he's been buying." She slid a list across the table: industrial chemicals, heavy metals, mercury compounds ordered through online scientific supply companies. Mercury. I stared at the receipts. Why would Tyler need mercury? Jessica's expression was grim. Mercury poisoning can accelerate cancer progression. In small doses over time, it can make someone's condition deteriorate much faster. My blood went cold. "You think Tyler is poisoning Dad?" "The timing matches your father's recent decline. Mercury poisoning symptoms mimic and worsen cancer symptoms. If Tyler's been adding small amounts to your father's food or medication, it would explain why his condition has been progressing faster than doctors expected." I thought about Tyler's newfound helpfulness around the house, his eagerness to prepare Dad's meals and organize his medications, the way he'd volunteered to handle Dad's vitamin supplements. "Your father probably has months left to live naturally," Jessica continued. "But if Tyler's accelerating the process, he might only have weeks. Tyler wants him to die quickly before anyone can investigate the missing money or question the inheritance." Tyler wasn't just stealing Dad's money, he was trying to kill him. The revelation about Tyler's attempted murder sent me into a state of controlled panic. Every instinct screamed to confront him immediately, but I forced myself to think strategically. If I was wrong, I'd destroy what little relationship remained with my family. If I was right, Tyler might escalate to more direct methods. I decided to dig deeper into the family history, starting with Mom's side. I'd always known her family had been in construction, but I'd never understood the full scope of their business. A trip to the Sacramento County Records Office revealed the truth. Morrison & Sons Construction had been one of Northern California's most successful building companies from 1960 through 1990. They'd built shopping centers, office complexes, and residential developments throughout the region. Mom's father, James Morrison, had built the business from nothing. Her brother, Michael, had run operations until a heart attack killed him in 1991. When Mom inherited her share of the company, she'd been the primary stakeholder. But here's what I'd never known: Dad hadn't started his own construction company. He'd married into Mom's family, business learned their techniques and client relationships, then gradually pushed the Morrison family out. I found the incorporation papers for Matthew's Construction. Dad had formed his company just 6 months after Mom's brother died, using equipment and client lists from Morrison and Sons. He'd essentially stolen the family business after gaining Mom's trust through marriage. The Lake Tahoe property had special significance too. It had been James Morrison's dream retirement home, a place he'd planned to build before his death. Mom had inherited the land and Dad had convinced her to sell it to fund their family's future. But instead of selling it, he'd kept the property and used Mom's insurance money to build the house her father had envisioned. Every piece of our family's wealth had been built on the foundation of Mom's family legacy, which Dad had systematically claimed as his own. But Tyler's role in the current conspiracy went beyond simple theft. I started paying closer attention to his behavior during family dinners, and patterns emerged that chilled me. Tyler had been recording conversations with Dad for months. I discovered this when I arrived early one evening and heard voices from Dad's study. Through the slightly open door, I watched Tyler holding his phone while Dad talked about his will and his concerns about leaving enough for Tyler's future. "I just want to make sure you're set for life," Dad said weakly from his chair. "Dad, you've been so generous already," Tyler replied, his voice dripping with false modesty. "I know Archie might feel left out, but you and I both know he's never really been part of this family." The recording continued for 20 minutes, with Tyler skillfully guiding Dad to say negative things about me. He mentioned how I rarely visited, how I seemed resentful about Sandra, and how I never showed appreciation for family sacrifices. Later, I discovered Tyler had been editing these recordings, creating audio clips that made Dad sound like he was complaining about my ingratitude and selfishness. Tyler had played these edited versions for Sandra and other family members, building a narrative that I was bitter and undeserving. The manipulation went deeper than I'd imagined. Tyler had been systematically destroying my reputation within the family for years, preparing the ground for Dad to justify cutting me out of the inheritance completely. Sandra's role became clearer too. During family gatherings, I started noticing how she steered conversations toward Tyler's accomplishments and my perceived failures. She'd bring up Tyler's college achievements while mentioning how I chose to go to a state school. She'd praise Tyler's social skills while suggesting I was always too serious and antisocial. But Sandra's cruelest comments were about Mom. During one dinner, she actually said, "It's such a shame Archie inherited his mother's withdrawn personality instead of Robert's business sense." Tyler would nod sympathetically as if my supposed character flaws were a family burden they all had to endure. The financial manipulation had been going on longer than I had realized too. Jessica's deeper investigation revealed that Tyler had been forging Dad's signature on bank documents for over 3 years, starting with small transfers that gradually increased in size. Tyler had learned to mimic Dad's handwriting perfectly. Bank statements showed dozens of transactions that Dad had never authorized, each moving money closer to Tyler's control. But the most disturbing discovery came when I decided to test the mercury poisoning theory. I convinced Dad to let me organize his medications, claiming I wanted to make sure he wasn't accidentally taking too much or too little of anything. In his bathroom cabinet, I found bottles of expensive vitamin supplements that Tyler had been giving him daily. I took one of the pills to a lab for analysis, claiming I wanted to verify the purity for my own health concerns. The results came back 3 days later. The vitamins contained trace amounts of mercury carefully hidden within the regular vitamin compounds. Someone had been systematically adding mercury to Dad's daily supplements for months. Tyler was slowly poisoning our father, accelerating his cancer progression, while making it look like natural disease advancement. But Tyler's plan had a timeline. I overheard a phone conversation between him and Sandra that revealed the final phase of their scheme. "The doctor thinks he has maybe 6 weeks left," Tyler said quietly, unaware that I was in the next room organizing files. "Once he's gone, we need to move fast. Archie will probably contest the will, so we need to get the assets transferred before he can file any legal challenges." "What about the offshore accounts?" Sandra asked. "Already set up. As soon as the will is executed, I'll transfer everything to the Cayman accounts. By the time Archie figures out what happened, we'll be untouchable." They were planning to disappear with everything as soon as Dad died. The cruelest part was listening to Tyler's false emotions when he was around Dad. He'd hold Dad's hand, tell him how much he loved him, promise to carry on the family legacy. All while slowly killing him and planning to steal everything. I realized I was racing against time. Dad's condition was deteriorating rapidly because of Tyler's poisoning. If I didn't act soon, Tyler would succeed in murdering our father and stealing both his fortune and my mother's legacy. But I also realized that direct confrontation wouldn't work. Tyler had spent years building a narrative where he was the devoted son and I was the ungrateful outsider. If I accused him of poisoning and theft without overwhelming proof, the family would side with him. I needed a different strategy. I needed Tyler to confess to everything publicly in front of witnesses who couldn't deny what they'd heard. That's when I started planning the will reading trap. The mercury poisoning discovery created an immediate moral crisis. Every day I delayed action, Tyler was slowly killing our father. But if I acted too quickly without sufficient evidence, Tyler would destroy any proof and probably accelerate his timeline. I decided to take a calculated risk. I anonymously contacted Dad's oncologist, Dr. Sarah Chen, claiming to be a concerned family friend who'd noticed unusual symptoms. "I'm worried about possible heavy metal poisoning," I told her during a careful phone conversation. "His symptoms seem to be progressing faster than typical for his cancer stage, and I've heard about cases where environmental toxins can accelerate cancer progression." Dr. Chen was initially skeptical, but she agreed to run comprehensive blood tests during Dad's next appointment. If there's any evidence of heavy metal exposure, we'd certainly want to address it immediately. The tests were scheduled for the following Tuesday. I made sure to be at the house that morning helping Dad prepare for his appointment, while Tyler was at his college classes. In the car driving to the medical center, Dad seemed more alert than he'd been in weeks. "You know, Archie, I've been thinking about your mother lately. She always said you had her analytical mind." "She was a smart woman," I replied carefully. "Smarter than I gave her credit for," Dad admitted quietly. "I was so focused on building the business that I didn't always appreciate what she brought to our family." It was the first time he'd acknowledged Mom's contributions in years. The blood test results came back 48 hours later. Dr. Chen called Dad with the news, but she also requested an immediate family meeting. "Mr. Matthews, we found concerning levels of mercury in your blood," she explained to Dad, Sandra, Tyler, and me in her office. "This type of heavy metal poisoning can significantly worsen cancer symptoms and accelerate disease progression." Tyler's face remained perfectly composed, but I caught a slight twitch in his left eye. "Where could mercury exposure come from?" Sandra asked with convincing concern. "It could be environmental," Dr. Chen said. "Old thermometers, certain fish industrial exposure. But these levels suggest consistent exposure over several months." Tyler played his role perfectly. "Dad, have you been eating a lot of fish lately? I read that some types can have mercury." "We need to eliminate the source immediately," Dr. Chen continued. "I'm prescribing chelation therapy to remove the mercury from your system. If we can stop the exposure, your condition should stabilize." That evening, I watched Tyler's behavior carefully. He seemed agitated, checking his phone constantly and making quiet calls from the backyard. I'd already planted a small recording device in Tyler's car, hidden under the passenger seat. The audio quality wasn't perfect, but it was clear enough to capture conversations. 2 days later, my patience was rewarded. Tyler drove Sandra to a Starbucks parking lot for what they thought was a private conversation. The doctors found the mercury. Tyler's voice came through clearly on the recording. "We need to change plans." "How did they even test for that?" Sandra sounded panicked. "I don't know, but it doesn't matter. The old man is improving too fast. His cancer symptoms are backing off now that he's not getting the supplements. So what do we do?" Tyler's voice turned cold. "We finish this directly. Make it look like the cancer took a sudden turn. I can get into his room at night." "Tyler, that's too dangerous. What if someone sees you?" "Then we stick to the original plan, but we need to move faster. Get the will reading scheduled for next week. Once that's done, we transfer everything offshore immediately." "What about Archie?" "What about him? He'll contest the will, but by then we'll be in Switzerland with the money. Let him fight an empty estate." The recording captured 20 minutes of detailed planning. Tyler discussed specific methods for making Dad's death look natural. Sandra outlined their escape plan to Europe, and both of them laughed about how easily they'd fooled everyone. But the most chilling part came at the end of the conversation. "I almost feel bad about the old man," Sandra said. "He really loves you." "He's weak," Tyler replied. "He loved my mother, he loved Archie's mother, and now he loves me. He's always been desperate for people to need him. It made him easy to manipulate. And Archie..." Tyler's laugh was bitter. "Archie's the only one who actually earned Dad's respect, and Dad never saw it. Archie built his own life, never asked for anything, worked for everything he got. If Dad had been smart, he would have been proud of Archie instead of guilty about him." Even in their conspiracy, Tyler couldn't help acknowledging the truth about our family dynamics. But the recording also revealed the timeline. They were planning to kill Dad within days. I called David Morrison immediately after hearing the recording. We arranged to meet that evening at his office. "This recording gives us evidence of conspiracy to commit murder," Morrison explained after listening to the audio. "But we need to be strategic about how we use it." Morrison contacted his friend Detective Maria Rodriguez with the Sacramento Police Department. Rodriguez was a specialist in financial crimes and elder abuse cases. "We can arrest them now based on the recording," Rodriguez explained during our meeting. "But if we move too quickly, they might destroy evidence of the financial fraud. Your best chance of recovering the stolen money is if we catch them in the act of executing their plan. So we let them proceed with the will reading. We monitor them closely while they think they're succeeding. Once they've committed to their story publicly and attempted to transfer the assets, we have them on multiple felony charges." Rodriguez arranged for surveillance on Tyler and Sandra, while coordinating with federal financial crime investigators to monitor the offshore accounts. But 2 days before the scheduled will reading, Tyler made his most desperate move. I'd been staying overnight at Dad's house, sleeping in the guest room to keep a closer eye on the situation. Around 2 in the morning, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Through my slightly open door, I saw Tyler moving quietly toward Dad's bedroom carrying a pillow. I followed silently, staying in the shadows. Tyler entered Dad's room and approached the bed where Dad was sleeping peacefully. Tyler raised the pillow above Dad's face. "Tyler, what are you doing?" He spun around, pillow still in his hands. "Archie, you scared me. I was just..." "Dad was having trouble breathing. I brought an extra pillow." Dad stirred awake. "What's happening?" "Nothing, Dad," Tyler said smoothly, placing the pillow at the foot of the bed. "I thought you might want another pillow for comfort." Tyler's explanation was plausible, but I'd seen his intent. He'd been planning to smother Dad and make it look like the cancer had caused respiratory failure. The next morning, I convinced Dad to let me arrange for a private nurse to stay overnight. "Your condition has been unstable lately. Having medical supervision overnight would give everyone peace of mind." Tyler objected immediately. "Dad doesn't need a babysitter. I can take care of him." But Dad agreed to the nurse, and Tyler's opportunity for a quiet murder disappeared. That's when I knew we were ready for the final confrontation. Tyler was desperate enough to attempt murder directly, which meant he'd be reckless during the will reading. Sandra was panicking about the timeline, which meant she'd make mistakes. I contacted Morrison and Rodriguez with the final plan. We'd let the will reading proceed exactly as Tyler expected, but with hidden cameras recording everything and police waiting outside. Tyler's confidence was about to become his downfall. The morning of the will reading, I arrived at Morrison's downtown law office 2 hours early. David Morrison had agreed to let me plant small cameras around the conference room while maintaining his professional obligation to execute Dad's will as written. "I want to be clear, Archie," Morrison said as we positioned the cameras. "Legally, I have to read your father's will exactly as he's written it. But once we have evidence of fraud and coercion on tape, we can challenge the document's validity." Detective Rodriguez was monitoring the camera feeds from a van outside the building. Federal agents were standing by to freeze Tyler's offshore accounts the moment he attempted any transfers. Dad arrived first, wheeled in by Sandra. He looked frail but determined, dressed in his best suit for what he believed would be his final act as family patriarch. "This is the right thing to do," he told Sandra quietly as they settled into chairs around the conference table. "Tyler deserves to inherit everything I've built." Tyler arrived precisely on time, wearing an expensive charcoal suit and an expression of solemn respect. He helped Dad adjust his wheelchair position and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Thank you for trusting me with our family legacy, Dad," Tyler said with perfect sincerity. "I promise to honor everything you and Sandra have built together." The performance was flawless. If I didn't know the truth, I would have believed Tyler's devotion was genuine. Also present were Dad's brother Frank and sister-in-law Margaret, along with Sandra's sister Carol. The extended family had come to witness what they expected to be a straightforward transfer of wealth to the beloved younger son. Morrison began the reading with the standard legal language about Dad's sound mind and intentions. Then he moved to the specific bequests. "To my wife Sandra, I leave the family home in Granite Bay, along with all furnishings and personal effects plus a cash settlement of $500,000. Sandra squeezed Tyler's hand, smiling with satisfaction. "To my brother Frank, I leave my classic car collection and $50,000 in appreciation of his lifelong friendship." Frank nodded with genuine emotion. "Thank you, Robert. That means the world to me." Morrison continued through smaller bequests to other family members, building toward the main inheritance. "To my son Tyler Matthews, I leave the entirety of Matthews Construction Company, including all business assets, client contracts, and real estate holdings. Additionally, Tyler inherits all remaining cash assets investment portfolios and the Lake Tahoe estate property." Tyler's face showed perfect surprise and humility. "Dad, I'm honored. I'll make you proud." "The total value of Tyler's inheritance is approximately $14 million, Morrison continued. "This includes the Lake Tahoe property, valued at $12 million, the business assets valued at $1.5 million, and liquid assets of $500,000. The room buzzed with congratulations. Frank clapped Tyler on the back. Carol hugged Sandra. Everyone was celebrating Tyler's good fortune. Then Morrison reached the final section. "To my older son Archie Matthews, I leave my father's pocket watch and my personal collection of tools in recognition of his independent spirit and his choice to build his own life separate from our family business." The room fell silent. Dad's brother Frank looked uncomfortable. Margaret shifted in her seat. The message was clear. Archie got meaningful but essentially worthless sentimental items. Tyler stood up and made a speech that would have won an Academy Award. "I know this might seem unfair to some people." He began looking directly at me. "But Dad and I have talked extensively about this decision. Archie has always made it clear that he doesn't want to be part of our family business. He's built his own successful career and has never shown interest in Dad's legacy." Tyler's voice grew stronger, more confident. "Real family means being present being supportive, being willing to sacrifice for each other. I've spent years helping Dad with his business, caring for him during his illness, and proving that I understand what family responsibility means. Sandra nodded along supportively. Frank and Margaret looked convinced by Tyler's reasoning. Archie is welcome to be part of our extended family, Tyler continued, but inheritance should go to the person who's earned it through loyalty and dedication. I think everyone in this room knows I've been the son who's truly been there for Dad. The family members murmured agreement. Tyler had successfully framed the inheritance as a reward for filial devotion rather than an arbitrary distribution of wealth. Dad himself looked proud as Tyler spoke. That's exactly right, son. You've proven yourself in every way that matters. Tyler sat back down, radiating quiet satisfaction. Sandra beamed at him with maternal pride. The will reading was proceeding exactly as they'd planned. Morrison looked at me expectantly, waiting to see if I would contest the will or cause a scene. That's when I stood up and smiled. Before we make this inheritance official, I said calmly, I have a question for the lawyer. You really don't know, do you? Morrison's face changed instantly. Color drained from his cheeks as he realized what I was about to reveal. Dad's voice cracked with confusion and rising anger. No, what are you talking about? Tyler's confident expression flickered with the first hint of uncertainty. Dad, I said, still smiling. Before Tyler inherits $12 million worth of property, don't you think everyone should know where the money for that property actually came from? The silence in the room was deafening. Tyler's face had gone pale, but he was still trying to maintain his composure. Archie, what are you talking about? Dad asked, his voice rising. This is not the time for whatever grievances you... The Lake Tahoe property was purchased using Mom's life insurance money. I said clearly, looking directly at Dad. $2,800,000 that she left specifically to me. Frank's jaw dropped. Margaret gasped audibly. Sandra started shaking her head frantically. That's ridiculous, Tyler said quickly. Dad bought that property with savings from the business and Sandra's contribution. No. I interrupted, pulling out the original insurance documents. He bought it by forging my signature on a power of attorney and stealing my inheritance. David Morrison stood up from his position as will executor. Ladies and gentlemen, I need to inform you that this will reading has been recorded for legal purposes, and federal agents are currently reviewing evidence of fraud related to these assets. Tyler shot to his feet. This is insane, Dad. Don't listen to this. Archie is just bitter about being left out. Sit down, Tyler, I said calmly, because that's not even the worst part. I pulled out my phone and connected it to Morrison's conference room speakers. 2 days ago, I recorded a conversation between Tyler and Sandra. I think everyone should hear what your devoted son really thinks about this family. Tyler's face went white as his own voice filled the room through the speakers. The doctors found the mercury. We need to change plans. Sandra's voice followed. How did they even test for that? I don't know, but it doesn't matter. The old man is improving too fast. His cancer symptoms are backing off now that he's not getting the supplements. Dad's hands gripped the arms of his wheelchair. What supplements? What mercury? Tyler's voice continued from the recording. We finish this directly. Make it look like the cancer took a sudden turn. I can get into his room at night. Frank stood up abruptly, his chair falling backward. Jesus Christ, Tyler. Are you talking about killing your father? The recording played Tyler's detailed discussion of offshore accounts, their escape plan to Europe, and Sandra's confession about forging bank signatures. But the most devastating moment came when Tyler's voice spoke the final truth. He's weak. He loved my mother, he loved Archie's mother, and now he loves me. He's always been desperate for people to need him. It made him easy to manipulate. Dad's face crumpled as he heard his beloved son describe him as weak and easy to manipulate. Sandra tried to run for the door, but Morrison had locked it when the recording started playing. You can't use a recording made without our consent, she screamed. Actually, Detective Rodriguez said as she entered the room with 2 other officers, we can use it as evidence of conspiracy to commit murder and elder abuse. Tyler made one last desperate attempt at damage control. "Dad, this is all fake. Archie is lying. He's always been jealous of our relationship." Dad's voice cut through Tyler's protests with quiet fury. "Show me the mercury." "What?" "The supplements you've been giving me. Show me the mercury." Tyler's mouth opened and closed silently. Morrison opened a briefcase and pulled out lab reports. The vitamin supplements Tyler has been providing contain mercury compounds specifically designed to worsen cancer symptoms and accelerate disease progression. Dad stared at Tyler with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, not disappointment, complete and utter devastation. "You've been poisoning me." Tyler's composure finally cracked completely. "Dad, I can explain. You've been killing me while telling me how much you love me. It wasn't supposed to hurt, I just needed the timeline to work." Tyler realized too late that he just confessed to attempted murder in front of witnesses and recording equipment. Detective Rodriguez stepped forward with handcuffs. "Tyler Matthews, you're under arrest for attempted murder, elder abuse, financial fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder." As Tyler was being handcuffed, he made one final desperate revelation. "Wait, you want to know the truth? Sandra and I have been together for 2 years. This whole thing was her idea. She's been planning to kill Dad and marry me so we could keep all the money." The room exploded in shocked gasps. Dad's brother Frank actually stumbled backward. Sandra screamed at Tyler, "You worthless little coward. Everything was perfect until you panicked. She seduced me." Tyler continued frantically as the officers pulled him toward the door. "She said Dad never appreciated her, that we deserved the money more than anyone else. She's the one who taught me how to forge signatures." Detective Rodriguez arrested Sandra as she lunged toward Tyler, still screaming obscenities. In the chaos of arrests and accusations, Dad sat quietly in his wheelchair, staring at his hands. When the room finally cleared, except for Morrison, Detective Rodriguez, and our family, Dad looked up at me with tears in his eyes. "Your mother's insurance money, I took it from you." "Yes. I told myself I was investing it for the family's future, but really, I just wanted to control it." I sat down across from him. "Dad, we can deal with the property issues later. Right now, let's focus on getting you healthy." Tyler was killing me. Dad's voice was hollow with shock. My own son was slowly murdering me while I praised him for being devoted. Frank put a hand on Dad's shoulder. "Robert Tyler isn't your son. I mean, biologically he is, but no real son would do what he did. You raised a psychopath." Dad looked at me with something I'd never seen in his eyes before: respect. "Archie, you saved my life. You could have let Tyler succeed and inherited everything by default, but you saved me instead. Dad, despite everything between us, I wouldn't let anyone murder you." Detective Rodriguez explained what would happen next. Tyler faced multiple felony charges, including attempted murder. Sandra would be charged with conspiracy fraud and elder abuse. The offshore accounts had been frozen, and federal agents were working to recover all stolen assets. The Lake Tahoe property will need to be returned to its rightful owner, Rodriguez explained. The original insurance beneficiary was Archie, which means the property belongs to him. Dad nodded slowly, as it always should have. Morrison gathered the documents scattered across the conference table. "We'll need to void this will and start over, Robert. But first, let's get you the medical care you need to remove the mercury from your system." As we prepared to leave the law office, Dad grabbed my hand. "Archie, I need to tell you something. Tyler was wrong about one thing in that recording. I wasn't weak because I loved people. I was weak because I didn't love the right people the right way. I should have appreciated what I had instead of trying to control everyone around me." It was the first real conversation my father and I had shared in 20 years. 6 months later, I stood on the dock of the Lake Tahoe estate, watching the sunrise paint the mountains in shades of gold and pink. The property was finally legally mine, but more importantly, it had become something Mom would have been proud of. The trial proceedings had been swift once Tyler and Sandra's crimes became public. Tyler was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for attempted murder, elder abuse, and financial fraud. Sandra received 12 years for conspiracy and her role in the systematic theft of Dad's assets. The evidence against them had been overwhelming. Beyond the recordings and financial documents, investigators found Tyler's detailed research into mercury, poisoning his purchase records for the chemicals and email exchanges with Sandra planning their escape to Switzerland. Tyler had tried to claim he was manipulated by Sandra, but the prosecution proved he'd been actively stealing from Dad's business accounts for 3 years before Sandra escalated to murder. His sentence reflected both his financial crimes and his attempt to kill his father. All stolen money was recovered from the offshore accounts. Tyler had moved over $1,200,000 to the Cayman Islands, but federal investigators tracked and seized every dollar. Sandra's betrayal of Dad went even deeper than anyone had realized. During the investigation, police discovered she'd been systematically replacing Dad's heart medications with placebos, contributing to his declining health. She'd also been stealing from his personal accounts for 5 years, funding her expensive lifestyle while playing the role of devoted wife. The most shocking revelation came when investigators found Sandra's journal, which detailed her plan to seduce Tyler as part of a long-term scheme to control the family fortune. She'd targeted Tyler specifically because he was narcissistic and easily manipulated, unlike me, whom she described as too independent and suspicious. Dad's health improved dramatically once the mercury poisoning treatment began. Dr. Chen was amazed by his recovery. Removing the mercury and stopping the medication tampering has essentially reset his condition. He's responding to cancer treatment better than we ever expected. Dad decided to sell Matthews Construction and use the proceeds to fund cancer research at UC Davis Medical Center. "I built that company by exploiting your mother's family legacy," he told me. "It's time to use it for something meaningful." He moved out of the Granite Bay mansion into a modest apartment near the medical center where he volunteers with newly diagnosed cancer patients. The man who'd once been obsessed with status symbols now lives simply and finds purpose in helping others navigate their diagnosis. Our relationship transformed slowly but genuinely. Dad began telling me stories about Mom that I'd never heard, sharing memories of her intelligence and kindness that he'd buried under years of guilt and remarriage. "Your mother was the smartest person I ever met," he admitted during one of our weekly dinners. "She saw through people instantly. She would have spotted Sandra's deception immediately." "Why didn't you listen to Mom's concerns about people?" Dad considered the question carefully. "Because listening to her would have meant admitting she was smarter than me, and my ego couldn't handle that." The Lake Tahoe estate became the Morrison Family Cancer Retreat, a place where cancer patients and their families can stay for free while receiving treatment at nearby medical facilities. Mom's family name was restored to honor their original vision for the property. I kept my job as a civil engineer but hired a staff to run the retreat center. We host about 30 families per month, providing them with peaceful surroundings and practical support during their medical battles. Dad visits the retreat regularly, sharing his experience as both a cancer patient and someone who learned important lessons about family priorities. His testimony about the importance of honest relationships has helped other families avoid the mistakes we made. The most meaningful change happened during our weekly conversations. Dad started asking about my work, my interests, and my perspectives on life. For the first time, he seemed genuinely curious about who I'd become, rather than disappointed about who I wasn't. "I spent so much energy trying to mold you into what I thought you should be," he reflected. "I never took the time to appreciate who you actually were." David Morrison helped us establish the Morrison Matthews Foundation, which provides legal aid to families dealing with elder abuse and financial exploitation. Too many families go through what we experienced, and we wanted to create resources to help them fight back. Frank and Margaret Dad's siblings apologized for their years of enabling Tyler's behavior and dismissing my concerns. "We wanted to believe Tyler was the perfect son," Margaret admitted. It was easier than acknowledging that your father's favoritism was harmful. The extended family has worked to rebuild trust and create healthier relationships. Family gatherings now focus on honest communication rather than maintaining appearances. One year after the will reading, I received a letter from Tyler in prison. He'd written to apologize and ask for forgiveness. The letter revealed that he'd finally begun to understand the magnitude of his crimes. I destroyed our family because I couldn't handle the possibility of not being the favorite, Tyler wrote. I turned love into competition and used Dad's affection as a weapon against you. I'm truly sorry for the pain I caused everyone. I wrote back explaining that forgiveness was a process and that rebuilding trust would take time. But I also told him that acknowledging his mistakes was an important first step toward becoming a better person. Sandra never apologized. According to her prison counselors, she continues to blame everyone else for her choices and shows no remorse for her actions. The most powerful moment came 6 months ago when Dad and I were sitting on the Lake Tahoe dock during sunset. The retreat center was hosting a family whose 8-year-old daughter was receiving cancer treatment, and we could hear the children playing on the beach. Your mother would be proud of what you've built here, Dad said quietly. She'd be proud of what you've learned too, I replied. Dad was quiet for a long moment. Archie, I need to tell you something I should have said 20 years ago. You became a good man not because of my guidance, but in spite of my failures. You have your mother's integrity and her strength. Thank you, Dad. I wasted so many years trying to make Tyler into the son I thought I wanted instead of appreciating the son I actually had. We sat in comfortable silence watching the sunset reflect off the water. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I had a father who actually saw me. The retreat center continues to grow. We've helped over 300 families in the past year, and many of them stay in touch to share their recovery progress. The property that was once a symbol of stolen wealth has become a place of healing and hope. I learned that justice isn't just about punishment for wrongdoing. Real justice means restoring what was taken and creating something better from the damage. The money Tyler stole has been returned, but more importantly, our family has learned to value honesty over appearance and substance over status. Dad's cancer is in remission, though he continues treatment as a precaution. He's healthier now than he's been in years, both physically and emotionally. Removing the toxic influences from his life, literally and figuratively, gave him a chance to become the person he was meant to be. The Morrison Matthews Foundation has helped 12 families successfully prosecute cases of elder abuse and financial exploitation. Each victory reminds us that standing up for truth, even when it's difficult and painful, creates positive change that extends far beyond our personal situation. Most importantly, I've learned that family isn't defined by blood relationships or inheritance rights. Real family is built on mutual respect, honest communication, and the willingness to support each other through difficult times. Dad and I will never have a perfect relationship. Too much damage was done over too many years. But we have something genuine now built on truth rather than obligation. The greatest inheritance my mother left me wasn't money or property. It was the example of living with integrity even when doing the right thing comes with a personal cost. That's a legacy worth fighting for, and it's something no one can ever steal. As the sun set completely over Lake Tahoe that evening, Dad looked at me with clear eyes and said, "Thank you for saving my life, son. Not just from Tyler's poison, but from my own blindness. Thank you for finally seeing me, Dad." We sat together in peace, two imperfect people who'd finally learned what family really means. I want to ask you something that's been on my mind since sharing this story. Have you ever had to choose between keeping peace in your family and standing up for what's right? It's one of the hardest decisions we face, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart or made you think about your own family relationships, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming difficult situations. And please share this with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to fight for truth and justice in their own life. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it reminds you that even in our darkest family moments, there's always hope for healing and redemption when we choose courage over comfort. Until next time, remember that your integrity is your greatest inheritance, and no one can take that away from you.